The final of the recent Women's World Open Squash Championship was considered by many to have been one of the greatest women's matches ever. Having won the first two games, Sarah Fitz-Gerald in the white shirt dropped the next two, allowing her Australian compatriot Michelle Martin to level the scores at 2-all. In the deciding fifth game, Martin took an 8-2 lead. It looked as though this match would end up in the same way as 9 of the 10 other finals between the two this year, with victory to Martin. But Fitz-Gerald went on a charge, saved 7 match points and eventually won the game 10-9 to take the title for a third successive year. At a time when the World Squash Federation is trying to place the sport in the Olympic frame, this was exactly what was needed. The president of the WSF also has a recent addition to the board, who it's felt will help the squash cause.
We're absolutely delighted to have Jahangir Khan, a new Vice-President of our World Squash Federation. The fact that he is probably the best known name in squash throughout the world is obviously a huge advantage for us, and we are really delighted to have him on board.
Jahangir Khan of Pakistan won 6 World Open titles, a record 10 British Opens, and was unbeaten for 5.5 years in any competition from 1981 to 1986, during which time he won over 500 successive matches. He was and continues to be considered the game's greatest player. Now he feels it's time to give back to squash some of what he got from it, and one of his primary tasks will be to persuade the powers that be that squash deserves a place in the Olympic fold.
By getting into Olympics, when you see other games in it, like you want to be part of that as well. And obviously Olympic is something that everybody watch, even they don't know about the game. And it gives a lot of promotion side and also recognized for everybody.
Jahangir and the WSF will know that to be included in the Olympics, squash would have to be practiced by men in at least 75 countries and on 4 continents, and by women in at least 40 countries and on 3 continents. Numerically, the sport may not be able to claim a place in the Olympics, but it's a different proposition when it comes to quality. Amongst the men, that quality in recent years came from players like Jahangir and his Pakistani compatriot Jahangir Khan. Meanwhile, the women's game was reigned over by New Zealand's Susan Devoy and Heather Mackay of Australia. Mackay was unbeaten in the British Open for 16 years, from 1962 until 1977, a record that will probably never be surpassed. What does keep getting better, however, is the equipment players use and their levels of fitness. Squash is definitely evolving.
I can see that there's so many countries in the world. I mean, they have never participated in the games or international games or anything like that, but they always ask me question of this, how we can do or how we can get into it. And to be honest, I mean, they never had a chance of that, sort of help or something like that. But I'm sure by getting into that, I can help a lot by visiting the countries, helping their juniors, and try to promote as much as I could. And perhaps I can do the same thing while I'm visiting somewhere in the tournaments and things like that,
One of the first places Jahangir visited as Vice President was Stuttgart in Germany, the venue for the Women's Individual World Open. It's also the site of the Women's World Team Championships. The favourites and top seeds, Australia, with the number 1 and 2 players in the world, qualify for the final after beating 3rd seed South Africa in the semis. The 2nd seeds, England, also reached the best of 3 game final after disposing of 4th seeds New Zealand. It's the 8th time the two countries have played each other in the final of this competition. The first rubber is between Michelle Martin in yellow, the world number 1, and Sue Wright. England's world number 4 takes a 2-1 lead. The Australian comes back in the 4th, tying it up at 2-all. When she takes the deciding 5th, Martin, who's won 10 tournaments in 1998, gives Australia a 1-love lead. In the second rubber, Carol Owens, also in the yellow, defeats Jane Martin, and Australia are confirmed winners. Sarah Fitz-Gerald beats Suzanne Horner in the dead third rubber as the Aussies retain the title for a fourth successive time. The quality of the performances in Stuttgart can only help squash, as it hopes to lure more players to enable it to be considered for the Olympics. Whilst the men's game is no longer dominated by one or two players, the women's game definitely is. Don't be surprised if Michelle Martin or Sarah Fitz-Gerald pick up a couple of extra Olympic golds for Australia in Athens in 2004.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I've been, around for a while now, but you can never, underestimate other teams either. So to come out and win today, it was a tough match for me to play, but to win, for Australia again is fantastic. And now we've sort of created a bit of history, I think, with our team because we've won quite a few World Championships now.
The girls did a very important job, and of course we were sitting there watching Michelle, and she's the number one. We're relying on the number one to win, and today we wanted a really good start, and Michelle came through for us, and of course Carol went on and finished the job. So I was just happy the pressure didn't have to come on to me, and it made my job easier going on as the third match.
Party tonight.
Absolutely, there's lots of drinks happening.